Hello everybody, Wolfpack here, and welcome to the Single Malt Strategy Podcast. I'm joined by Tortuga Power, the Historical Gamer, and Finnish Jager. Today we are going to be talking about our top 5 nostalgic games, most nostalgic games. That's an exciting podcast topic. We were scrambling for things to talk about, and I don't know who suggested this one, but it's a good suggestion.
Yeah, we don't need to name names, but I'll take credit.
We had a pretty good brainstorming session about potential future podcast ideas, mostly regarding our favorite games, because we could also do, I don't know, favorite games in the top 10 years, because that list would look different for me even as well. So
I even want to immediately drill down into this, like just clarify a little bit what the topic is. It's not like the best games, it's nostalgic games. That's a very good way of phrasing it too, so that people know these are not the top. These may, oh God, we may have some real stinkers in here.
Yeah, they may not be the best games in their particular genre. They might not have aged the best, but they mean something right here. And I'm pointing to my heart.
I mean, if you're talking about a game that you have nostalgia for, it's probably an older game. Mm-hmm. I mean, we didn't have any rules on a time frame, but like it's probably older. If it's an older game, it's probably got flaws. Like, let's be real. If you're looking at games that 20 years ago or whatever it might be, games were not as polished in a lot of cases back then. So these aren't going to be perfect games, whether they're the top 5 for someone else, whether they're your top 5 or they're just 5 games that you want to talk about. I know for me personally, I would say these are like maybe the top 5 most influential games on me as a gamer, but to each their own. We just want to talk about some games that are important to us, and that's what we're going to do today.
All right, well, with that out of the way, let's kick this off. I mean, who wants to start? Does anyone have something they're really itching to talk about?
I'll start with one. At 5th on my list, and I don't know if we're doing this round robin or not, but at 5th on my list is Panzer General by SSI, the original Panzer General. I know a lot of folks who are like Panzer General fans swear by Panzer General 2, but for me, it was Panzer General 1, and I actually played that game on PlayStation 1. Didn't really have much of a gaming computer growing up. This game came out in the early 90s, 94 I think it was, and I got it on the original PlayStation. And it was really kind of, I don't know if it was really my first war game, but it might have been. Like it's the one I have the earliest memory of playing a lot. And, you know, I think the Panzer General style game has been a little bit played out these days. I think folks are maybe a little bit sick of it. You know, again, it's a 30-year-old format. And it's a little puzzly, right? It's a turn-based war game where you've got units with up to 10 hit points, and you've got different unit types, tanks, anti-tank, aircraft, fighters. You've got, obviously, scenarios that sort of span 1939 to hypothetical stuff in 1946. And as the game title would have you guess, you play from at least in the campaigns, you play from the side of the Germans, and you can play starting in Poland, you can start in Russia, or you can start sort of once the war's turned against Germany and you're fighting to defend Italy. But this was just, for me anyway, it was really sort of my first meaningful foray into wargaming. And I really enjoyed it. And, I played it a lot listening to baseball games and listening to Bob Uecker, and I drew maps out as I would conquer countries in the game. And it kind of had like a little bit of a branching campaign too, like depending on how you did in missions in the campaign, you would get a different mission that would be influenced by your prior battle. It had core mechanics where units would gain experience and move over. And I think it deserves to be on any list that's really looking at classic war games, because even if you're bored of the topic, it obviously spawned a very successful lineage of games that all copied it, from Allied General to the strategic mind games that are coming out nowadays, or the Panzer Corps games that are coming out nowadays. Like, there have been 30 years of games that have emulated this format, and I believe it was the first. It certainly was the first really successful game, and it was made by SSI. So definitely a game that I played a lot of as a kid and still look fondly on today.
Wow, there you go. I have never played that game, but sounds neat. I think we are going to notice the interesting age difference between us with our nostalgic games.
Oh, yes. I forgot you guys are Zoomers.
Okay. Well, anyway. All right. Who's next?
If I go with my number 5, I'm not going to have too much to talk about here, but my game also has Panzers in the title.
Ooh.
Yeah, yikes, right? It's a Codename Codename Panzers,
Oh, I
Phase
thought you were gonna
1
say
and
Panzer
2.
Girls.
Panzer Girls? No, stop interrupting the historical game.
Sorry.
When you say his full name like that, it sounds like you're a parent.
Mr. the Historical?
Mr. Historical Gamer. Yeah, so Codename Panzers was an RTS game. It was probably one of the first RTS games that I remember playing, and it was interesting. I think it has some similar game mechanics that I remember seeing now in like Gates of Hell. Vehicles could like lose crew, and you could capture vehicles and run around with like a French tank or a Soviet tank. So like if you were playing as one side or the other, you could have captured equipment. I somewhat recently watched like some of the missions, and I remember thinking like as a kid, those graphics look really good, and I don't think they look bad now. I remember thinking like after watching some of the missions the past couple months, like the combat range of these RTS games are so short. Like you have two tanks just like face hugging and blasting away at each other, and you think about how our RTS games have evolved to like really manage distance and like armor penetration in those games. I think it's interesting to see how that has advanced. But really all I have to otherwise say about Codename Panzers was I felt like the missions were really, really cool. I don't really know how many of them were like historical. I remember finding them difficult. I found them challenging. I found them rewarding. I found them fun. Like the set pieces were really well done. So it was a game that kind of set me down a RTS path going forward in my gaming career.
Can I ask some questions about this? Because first of all, I just looked up this game. I vaguely have some fuzzy memory about it. I noticed that the year it was released is 2004, which is... I just realized that a lot of my nostalgia games were the early 2000s as well. Okay, I think you already answered this, but like what made this game special is it's what was the game called? The not Close Combat. The one, not Men of War, the one that was recently released as number 3 and it sucked.
Company of Heroes?
Company of Heroes, thank God.
Yeah, I never actually played Company of Heroes, and I don't know why I kind of bounced off of that. I know I remember trying.
Was this contemporary though? When was Company of Heroes?
Company of Heroes is a 2006.
Oh, so this actually predates it.
But Company of Heroes has that same like face hugger. I love that that term, by the way. Finnish. But Company of Heroes has that sort of face hugger range engagements that I always thought were goofy, looked goofy to me. It's like, oh, they're 2 centimeters away and they can just see each other.
As a kid, I didn't think anything about that, but you know, now as an adult and knowing more about history, it's really strange. Like I'm looking at some screenshots of the game and I see just like a Panzer IV right in front of a priest, and I don't know, this half track is right next to some T-34, so it's just like kind of weird. But yeah, I felt like the missions were really good because they were like there was a lot of variation in the settings and the locations and the units. I thought the game had a lot of units, and so I give the game a lot of credit for that. Only question, Tortuga?
Yeah, I mean, when I looked up the game, it looked like Company of Heroes, so that's what came to mind. But I also noticed the year. I have a lot of nostalgia in 2004, 2005 as well.
Yeah, so I played Phase 1, I played Phase 2. They kind of just basically Game 1 and Game 2. For some reason, I thought this game had some sort of like Race to the Bomb DLC or something like that.
Do you know why this particular game series ended?
I do not. It looks like they made Codename Panzers Cold War, which I've only have heard about right at this second, so I've never heard of this game. But I don't even know who the developer is of this game is. Yeah, I don't know why it ended. I think they were two popular games, and maybe if there's anyone who's commenting like, oh yeah, I played that game, or I've never heard of that game, but I just remember like, you know, as a kid, sometimes you'd go into the Walmart or whatever, the Best Buy, and I'd want to go look at the game shelf. I think I spotted it one of those days, and then eventually ordered Phase 2 off of like whatever Amazon eventually became.
All right, well, I'll go to my number 5, and this is going to be quite the turn. My top 5 nostalgic game is EVE Online. And I know what you're thinking, that game's still kicking. Yeah, it sure is, but it was released in 2003 initially, and I played a lot of it for quite a while there, in the late like 2010s or so. And I don't know, it's a game that I wish more MMOs had this sort of just completely player-driven economy, game mechanics, and world. I was kind of hoping something like Naval Action would scratch that itch for me, but no other game has really scratched that itch like EVE Online does.
I know it's real old by now, but did you ever play World War II online?
I've never actually played that.
Scale map of like the Low Countries and that portion of France that bordered them. Kind of similar-ish. I don't know that there was really a player economy, but like you'd have limited number of units for, units would take losses, logistics mattered. Again, the towns would change sides and you'd have to go back and try and, like, it was real big at one point in time. I dabbled in it like 10 years ago and it was like a ghost town. And there were still a few people playing it, but.
Yeah, I mean, I know there's some games that have kind of tried to replicate that sort of thing. One that comes to mind is Foxhole, which has a persistent war that goes on. It rolls over once a war is won, but Eve doesn't roll. I don't know. It's just cool that this entire in-game universe has been, I don't know, essentially one persistent universe since the game's release date in 2003, and most of the major events are player-driven. Oh, there's something about it. I was hoping naval action would kind of come in and be more like Eve. I think that's like the perfect setting for it, sailing ships in the Caribbean. But yeah, and I was always really big into MMOs to begin with. Some MMOs almost made it onto my top 5 list, but EVE Online is probably the most influential MMO that I think I've played, even if it's probably not the most enjoyable at times.
That was one of those games that I remember seeing articles about a lot, like $20 million worth of in-game currency was just destroyed in a battle in EVE Online, and it always sounded so cool, but I could never, it had been around a long, long time before I ever looked at it, and I was kind of like, I never could commit myself to it.
Yeah, and I bounced off it a couple of times. Like, I think it took me 3 times of trying that game before it really hooked me, and once it hooked me for a long time.
I think you could do a whole podcast on, I'm sure you could do a whole podcast on Eve. I mean, there's so much that game really has done a lot.
Yeah.
It wasn't the first MMO, but I mean, it was a trendsetter.
A trendsetter that like no one's really been able to replicate. Yeah.
Replicate? Yeah. I mean, nobody else has people committing felonies just to win in-game battles, I mean, this...
Right, yeah. People would go and cut, like, power cable lines at some dude's house who was commanding a fleet. I mean, people did all sorts of crazy stuff in that game. And like you said, that was illegal. Some guy actually did a Kickstarter, and I actually bought it because I thought that concept was cool. It was like an actual detailed history of EVE Online from and it's written like a history book, and you see all the wars and all these personalities. I mean, it's a cool game. And it looks beautiful too, even today. Like, it was released in 2003, and I mean, they've updated it, they've kept up with it, it looks great. The ship design, I've been a pretty big fan of it. I think as far as sci-fi ships go, like, they have an awesome aesthetic, so.
Can I ask you then, Wolf? Maybe I have one question for you as well. What do you not like about it? Like, because this game has so much appeal, and I have also tried it. I bounced off it, though. Maybe.
What do I not like about it?
What keeps you from playing it, then?
It is a time commitment, that's for sure. I mean, it doesn't have to be. You can always just hop in and dabble around. But yeah, it's a pretty big time commitment. I don't really have the time for it, and it's a lot of time doing, it could feel like nothing. Also, there have been some changes in the game that I've not been a huge fan of. They've added quite a few microtransactions and stuff. So how the game works is you have skills, and you level up, you get skill points in real time. If you've played Eve, so you kind of know that, like, you train certain skills, and it takes, for anywhere from like an hour to train to, a month or more, depending on what kind of skill. And your character learns this in real time. They went down a slippery slope with like these things called skill injectors, so you could like sell your skill points on the in-game market and inject them into characters or whatever. And now, I forgot, they've just been adding skins, I feel like, and all sorts of other... It's hard to say it's pay to win, because it's Eve, but it's pay to win adjacent, pay to win-esque. There is an argument to be made that it's pay to win. That argument's always been there.
Because you could always buy stuff, right?
Yeah, you could buy this stuff called Plex, which was essentially... Because EVE Online was originally a subscription-based MMO. And I did not mind the subscription fee, but you could earn your monthly subscription fee by buying something in-game. Like, you could pay for your subscription in-game if you made enough money, whatever. You can buy it on the market. And that was called Plex at the time. Things have changed, so I'm probably not addressing it exactly how it is today. But And World of Warcraft has something like that now, where you could buy like subscription tokens using in-game gold or whatever. So if you grind enough, you don't have to pay real money.
Yeah.
They've kind of run with that because the game's, I don't know, not as popular as it once was. And a lot of that came when they added the free-to-play. There's a free-to-play game mode in EVE. And every time I've played EVE, I have not done the free-to-play stuff. I've always been like, well, I need to subscribe because the free-to-play restrictions, although aren't horrible, they're not great either. Which is the same with a lot of MMOs. And in general, I've kind of stopped playing MMOs these days because they're just a time sink and grindy. But yeah, that's about it.
I didn't realize the war was the same, or the timeline was the same since the game first started. I think that's quite an interesting concept.
Yeah, it's really cool. It's all persistent. It's like Iceland's biggest export.
Iceland, really?
Yeah.
I think I did an audiobook that I listened to that was like about the history of some war that occurred in EVE. Someone actually like wrote a book about it.
Yeah, it's exactly like those books that I was talking about, that guy kickstarted. I mean, it's a living, breathing world, and I don't know, it's a shame no other MMO has tried to replicate it. And I do like how, I don't know, I guess I feel like EVE's relatively grounded, too. Like, I like the setting a lot, so. And anyway, that's that. What about you, Tortuga? What's your number 5?
I'm going to keep this one short, but I might have a more lengthy topic myself or game.
That was supposed to be my short one. I rambled.
Well, watch this. Demonstrate how it's done. Number 5 is Aerobiz Supersonic, and I played it on the Super Nintendo, and it was probably the game that got me into liking the fact that numbers go up in Tycoon type games. I realized how much I like them through this game. That's all I can really say about it. It was impactful for me, partly because I did play this with my father. There's multiplayer mode, so it's pretty fun. But yeah, it's what let me know that Tycoon type games, that kind of thing, would be my jam. I don't have a lot more to say about it. It's a really good game. If anybody, it's actually, I feel like, has stood the test of time. I recently replayed it and it's still fun.
Yeah, that was another thing I liked about EVE, just seeing numbers go up. You know, it is a satisfying thing.
But if nobody has any interesting questions to ask me about that, let's go on to THG. Go back to your number 4.
What was the game setting for Tortugas?
About Aerobiz Supersonic? Do you, like this game, by the way, it's just you're an airline company.
Okay.
It's an airline tycoon game, right? You run an airline. It's kind of, did you play it on the SNES?
Yeah, that's why I said Super Nintendo.
Oh, sorry, I might have missed that.
I rambled too long. I get it.
No, I was looking at looking at PTO 2, which is also SNES. But
Oh, was that on your list?
no, it could be, but
All right, hit us with your number 4.
Number 4, Total War Attila.
Attila.
Isn't that recent?
That game came out in 14? That's not nostalgia.
Oh no, my bad. Sorry, Total War Barbarian Invasion.
Yeah, this guy's so nostalgic he got the name of the game wrong. Get out of here. Get out of here. I can't believe this.
It's the same game. It's just it's older.
It's the same game.
Okay, you heard it here. All right, go on. Your opinion's completely invalid now, by the way.
Total War Barbarian Invasion. What more do you need to know? It's the good Rome Total War. It takes place during the fall or the end period of the Western Roman Empire during the Huns campaigns against Rome. And I always, I think the reason this game's on this list, it's not the best Total War game. Like, I know I've said that multiple times on the podcast before, that I think Barbarian Invasion, is better than base Rome Total War. That's a separate discussion to have.
That's an opinion, by the way, which nobody agrees with. Everybody thinks the opposite. But just so people know.
You know what? If anything about 2024 has told me, it's that when everybody goes one way, you should definitely go the other.
Yeah, that's my motto when I drive.
Sound reasoning. When everyone doesn't jump off a cliff, THG does.
There's a lot of things where this is an applicable and valid statement. And,
There's a lot of cliffs.
Yeah, I've never actually... Oh, that's not true. I've been to the Grand Canyon and I've been to the cliffs and more. But, cliffs ain't just popping up all over the Midwest for me to jump off.
When people wear clothes outside, THG does not wear clothes.
Well, I'm glad that's one of your nostalgic... You want to know my most nostalgic memory of Total War Barbarian Invasion, THG?
Sure.
I'd like to just say it. I like Barbarian Invasion too, but my biggest memory of it is being forced to play it because my younger brother broke my Rome disc. So I had to go and play
brother did you a favor.
the fucking expansion.
I'm so sorry.
He did you a favor. The base game sucks. It's good with mods.
Get over it.
It is good with mods, but the base game, like, we're going to break Rome's Republic into 3 factions that are actually 3 separate countries.
Oh my god, you fucking nerds.
Let me just say the reason that this is on the list. You know, Total War games, we don't need to go into the details here. But the reason this is in the list is because strategy gaming, by default, the answer is you are going to take a small little country and you are going to grow it and you are going to snowball it and you are going to, after some difficulty early on, you're going to steamroll everything in your path and paint the entire map red or whatever your color is. And Total War Attila was the first game that I remember playing where if you play as Rome anyway, you were playing as a decaying empire, as an empire where things are falling apart and you were trying to hold them together. And that had a real profound impact on me as a gamer because that is not a game design tactic that most developers do. I think it is a very difficult mechanic to get right. And I think Barbarian Invasion has problems where, like, once you fix enough things, like, pretty quickly on, you can just flip the script and you're real powerful already. But I think the idea of being an established empire that is collapsing, that is trying to hold back the hordes, that is just barely sort of surviving, and you kind of have to strip resources around, like, that just spoke to me in a way that I don't think any strategy game had really done before, and I thought it was very unique, and I thought it was very important. And I think that period of Rome's empire is far more interesting to me anyway than the Republic. And so that's kind of why this game's on that.
Okay, fair. I do generally agree. Like, I do like Barbarian Invasion, and I do like Attila Total War. And I agree that period of Roman history is pretty interesting. I think it's significantly less popular, and that's why you don't see it very much. People like to paint the map or whatever, but I get what you're saying. I do like a lot of the mechanics.
It's interesting too because you've seen other games like try to, like, Field of Glory Empire, or was it Empires?
Yes.
Or what are Kingdoms? Like, Empires has like this decadence mechanic where they're trying to be like, as you get bigger, it's hard to hold things together. I don't know if it really works or not, but like it's a constant challenge that games try to be like, all right, so as you get big, how do we make this game still be interesting? And I think it's a problem that most strategy games fail to do.
I think the only one that did something good was Shogun, with Realm Divide. Although it was annoying.
I would say
when it happened.
I would say that Europa Universalis has done it.
Crusader Kings a little bit.
Yeah, I think the Paradox games have done an okay job balancing this. People still fight beyond it. You still go, but I think that there's at least mechanics in there. It's just players just don't want to see it. That's why you don't put it into a game, because games are not supposed to be realistic. They're supposed to be fun. And it's just not fun to have something that you, like, if I build my big Lego tower and somebody comes, kicks it, yeah, that's life, but I don't like it.
But the reason it works for Barbarian Invasion is you didn't build it. There's no sense of ownership of, like, I did all this work to make it big and now it's falling apart. It works in Barbarian Invasion because you start in a state of collapse. And so, like,
you should stream it, THG.
I think I have in the past, but I could. Anyway, we don't need to talk about this for a long time.
Oh, it'll make a return.
It will. Okay.
Go ahead, finish.
My number 4 it's actually going to be another RTS game.
Shocking. On single malt strategy.
I'm such an outlier here.
Yeah, while everyone was talking, I was thinking, like, what if I should have put this as my number 5? But anyway, it doesn't matter. My game for number 4 is Axis and Allies. This is a computer game. This is also from 2004. So it's a real-time strategy game. I don't know how to describe it other than, like, you'd be plopped on the map on these battles, and then you'd have to build up your headquarters and build your units, and then fight the enemy faction, the enemy forces. I guess you could think of it kind of like Age of Empires in a way, like that same kind of building up your base and then moving out to attack. But it's a World War II.
This is not the board game Axis and Allies?
You said the computer game.
No, I realize the computer game. I'm saying, but like there's a digital version of the board game, so it's not that?
There is a digital version of the board game in this game, yes. And you could fight those battles in an RTS scenario.
Interesting.
But then it also had, each country had a campaign associated with it. And then it was also interesting because there were ahistorical campaigns too. So like Operation Sea Lion or the capture of Moscow or whatever like that. I remember those at least. So that was kind of interesting. It was like probably the first time I had been exposed to like alt history, I guess, in any kind of situation, and it was in a video game. So I thought that was really cool. I'll answer your question, THG. What do you got?
No, I just saying that's interesting because I've never I hear Axis and Allies, and I think the digital version of the board game. I was not aware that there was one where you could actually fight battles out in that way.
It's got a Wikipedia page.
That was my confusion was there. I was like, wait, so that you can fight them out like that as opposed to just rolling dice?
Whoa, this actually looks awesome.
So I think other things I liked about this game, I'll say, there was some element of research when you were fighting your RTS battles. So you had some of the buildings that you constructed would then unlock some research, and then you had to kind of have manage a little bit of an in-game resource economy. I guess you had probably supplies or fuel or something like that, some money, and you would spend that to buy your units, to do some research, to buy some special weapon attacks or whatever. Your forces were commanded by a general, and they had some sort of special attacks or special bonuses for your troops. So that was kind of fun. Lastly, I want to say that the game had a mission creator for the RTS side of the game, and I played a lot of that. And I think what really hooked me was that I was creating missions with scripts, and because the game had that in the mission creator, so you could have once one side captures this town, then there'd be some sort of scripted event that you could add in the mission creator, and it brings in some sort of outside factor. So there was one I remember I created, if I remember all this, I created a German invasion of Malta scenario. That was kind of fun. And I did a capture of Baku German scenario. And this was the time I wasn't even interested in the Pacific at this stage, so there was probably a ton of content that I wasn't even paying attention to. I was just oh yeah, Germany and the Soviet Union, that's what's interesting to me. Yeah, so I created a capture of Baku scenario, and I used that kind of scripting thing where once the German side got to a city, then that would trigger a German paratrooper drop somewhere else, and that kind of threw both sides to kind of have to deal with that situation. But yeah, the mission creator was what kept me playing that game for probably a lot longer than the regular content had available.
Yeah, this actually looks pretty interesting, the RTS battles in this. Because you said Axis and Allies, and I was like, oh, the board game. I played the actual board game. But this actually is pretty interesting. I'm surprised. I don't know. I know there's other Axis and Allies, online games or whatever. I'm surprised they haven't kind of taken this RTS element and kind of spun it off or done something different with it. But because that Axis and Allies name recognition, that brand, I mean, it's huge. Everyone knows that, so...
Yeah, I remember, so this game, as a kid playing it, I remember there were some really hard missions. Man, I remember playing the U.S. campaign and landing on Okinawa and, constantly losing. And I was like, how do I beat this game? Maybe they're probably, as an adult, you're like, oh, man, these scenarios are super easy. But, as a kid, I loved that challenge. So that's another thing that kept me coming back to this game, that it was challenging, at least for me.
I see.
2004 was a good year, I see.
I know. I went back. I'm looking at my list now, and I have everything on my list is from the first couple of years of the 2000s.
I think mine are too. I mean, 3 are at least. One's a little older.
All right, who's next? Is it Wolfpack, I think? Yeah.
We're going off the beaten path again with something a little different. This one's a CRPG.
Oh boy.
Not a JRPG?
No, not a J.
What's the C stand for?
So, a computer role-playing game?
Baldur's Gate.
It's Baldur's Gate 2.
Boom!
It was one of my first CRPGs. I played a ton of it. I also played a ton of Icewind Dale, which was a spin-off that was made by, oh my gosh, the company. You know it. Someone's thinking it. Interplay.
Hooded Horse?
Oh, no, yeah, not Hooded Horse. But yeah, it was made by Interplay. And Icewind Dale was really good as well. It was more of a dungeon crawler. But the story and some of the set pieces in Baldur's Gate or Baldur's Gate 2 specifically, were what really kind of captured my imagination when I was younger. And I was like, this is great. And it really started a love of CRPGs. And, you know, there's been some lulls, but I've recently kind of gotten back into them. Baldur's Gate 3 really, I guess, kickstarted, like, ignited my love for CRPGs. And now I've been looking at playing some Rogue Trader, which is a Warhammer 40k CRPG. It's just a genre I've always really enjoyed. And Baldur's Gate 2 is the reason for that. Along, again, with Icewind Dale, but one had to make it on the list, so I went Baldur's Gate 2.
This is a great game.
Yeah. And it also kickstarted my love for, you know, all things fantasy, D&D, things like that, so
I think that brings us back around to Tortuga, right?
yeah.
Yeah, I know it's my turn, and I didn't really put any of these in order.
Oof.
So I have Baldur's Gate as one.
Oh!
I feel like maybe it's a good time to mention that. But I also have Rome Total War, so let's go with Baldur's Gate next. So we'll just keep it short. Baldur's Gate, for me, with the original. I remember I have vivid memories of playing the demo, which you were allowed to play until just after you leave Castlewind, or whatever the hell that first city's name was. And then you can't really go any further. And this is before I'd ever played any D&D, so I actually thought that armor class, which is a very confusing thing back in that whatever version of that is, that the lower number is higher.
It's 2.5, right? That's the rule system they use.
So stupid. So I kept accruing basic leather armor, and my pea-sized brain couldn't handle the fact that when I put on this better armor, my number went down. I was like, oh, I guess leather's just really good in this world. So I accrued like a gajillion leather armors for my part. Oh, so you couldn't move any further than like the one map. There was like a couple areas you could go right outside of Castlewind, or whatever the hell the name was. But you could just keep, random encounters would happen if you kept going back and forth between those areas. I probably spent 100 hours, I kid you not, in the demo, just going back and forth and grinding. I had the whole concept of a CRPG was so mind-blowing to me. So very, very impactful when I eventually did get the full game. Played through, beat it, loved it. Bought the sequel. Yes, Baldur's Gate 2, also good, but for me it doesn't, nostalgia factor is just way higher for Baldur's Gate. A game that you put like 100 hours into a demo, it's going to leave a mark in your brain.
In Baldur's Gate 1, I mean, it's great as well. I guess I think they took, with Baldur's Gate 2, they like just took everything up a notch with the environments and everything, and I still think like some of those environments aged really well in both the games. Yeah, both really good games. And yeah, I know there was a lot of, there's some videos, I'll send them to you. He did a really good analysis of Baldur's Gate. Apparently, the whole THACO thing was really confusing to a lot of gamers in general too. And they always thought about changing it to D&D like version 3.
That would have made more sense.
Yeah. Anyway, it's all pretty cool.
Well, I don't know. Maybe it did take me some time to learn it, but eventually it dawned on me that no, leather armor isn't better than splint mail. So,
and you know, I really like the real time with pause. I think that it's awesome watching the fights play out, pressing spacebar, pausing, and issuing like orders to all of your, you know, characters, and watching it just play out. I know it's kind of come out of fashion. People don't like it as much, but I still really like it. I think it's a pretty fun system.
To me, another thing is the replayability of like rolling a new character. It's the first game I played where this like RPG setup where you can spend, I remember, God, I had so much time as a kid. What did I do with it? I spent probably 10 hours. No, that's way too much. But I spent a long ass time re-rolling for the perfect 18/99.
Oh, yeah.
God, it took forever. But it's like, why did they make you do that? Why can't you just choose it? Why you make... I did it. I spent probably over an hour just listening to music and fucking re-rolling.
You know what the worst part is? There were so many times when I would just re-rolling. I'd accidentally click.
Oh, I know
pass, something actually pretty good.
Oh, I know it. Oh, my parents know it. I think my mom probably could remember this because she would probably hear me being like, and they'd be like, what's wrong? And I'd be like, well, the thing. And then they immediately would not care when they realized it was about a video game. But
yeah, it was about a game. It's like, okay, kid.
So memories. Nostalgia. This is off the charts. You can't not remember these things.
Yeah.
But the replayability was huge. And I think that the openness of that world where you can do things in any order. A lot of the previous games I played were RTSs where there's no such concept. It's like usually a linear progression through the campaign. So that's, that was very, very cool to me. Like, mind-blowingly cool. Which probably brings us back to THG for his number 3.
Yeah, so when you're talking about, like, your, these dramatic moments of, like, your parents asking what the hell's going on or whatever, this isn't my number 3, but it made me want to include NBA Jam on my list, because that was, like, a sleepover staple of, like, playing that thing till, like, 3 in the morning with friends. But I guess, my number 3 is Falcon 4.0. Flight sim game, obviously. The Falcon series 4.0, probably most well known for having the dynamic campaign of the Korean War. Fly as a single F-16 pilot, sort of participating in this gigantic conflict where you're one plane, but somehow your one plane's flight package results are going to influence the entire war. But still, I think from a nostalgia point of view, this game really lands where it did, because I'd never seen a game with such a huge campaign, so many interlocking pieces, you like actually feeling like a pilot in like a much larger world, a much bigger world, like telling your own story as a pilot within this larger world. And then, that persistent clock was so huge to me, this idea of like, hey, you're flying, all this other stuff is going on at the same time. And when you're not flying, the war is still going on. And so like I built these own little stories in my mind of like what was going on. And I would actually leave the clock running at 1x. And this is not good from a play the game well point of view, but I would leave the clock running when I was in high school playing this game, when I would go to sleep, because my logic was like, well, a real pilot has to sleep. And so you can't be flying, all the time. And the game let you jump from plane and package to plane and package. Like, you weren't really one pilot. There wasn't really downtime that you had to manage. But like in my head, that's the story I wanted to tell. And so, this was just, it's on the list less because of the flight sim element. Like I turned some of the realism stuff down. I was not a rivet counter as a kid.
What?
I'm sure the way I played, you'd be frowning at me at Wolf.
Come on, Wolf. How dare
but
you?
I think the thing that really was, to me, was so special about the game was just the scale of the campaign, the persistence of the campaign, and its dynamism. And I don't think I've never seen anything like that. And I don't know that anything's gotten close. There have been games with sort of nods to it, but I don't think I've ever seen anything like that before or since.
There's a buddy of mine, the YouTube channel, I'm gonna plug him, whatever. His name's Enigma. He did an interview with the guy who designed that campaign, and he was an intern.
I think I heard that, yeah.
And he made that campaign. And like, still 20 years later, there's nothing that even comes close to what this guy made. I don't know. It's amazing. It's a cool interview, if any of you are wondering. It's like interviewing the Falcon 4 campaign creator.
The thing is, when I hear that story, I'm like, first of all, that's amazing. But second of all, like, how has it not been duplicated? What has that guy gone on to do? If like, can't he do something like this again?
I believe he's still in the game industry, and in the interview he said like it wasn't the flight sim aspects of it that really interested him. It was like he was playing a lot of RTSs, so he just made it like an RTS, and there you go. But yeah, I mean,
so where did he go from there? I'm curious, but we don't have to answer now.
I'm sure he says in the interview. But yeah, it's always funny that, I mean, that's the gold standard, and it's yet to be replicated, or even nothing even comes close.
I think part of, I don't know that this is true within wargaming, but maybe the rivet counter nature of where flight sims have gone, like casual flight sims have, I won't say they disappeared, but they certainly have gotten, like, people who are really into flight sims generally are not so into the casual flight sims. And obviously Falcon 4.0 wasn't casual. You had a freaking binder of rules. But I think, like, this sense of having something that's imperfect and having something that isn't super polished and does have flaws, because as awesome as that campaign was, there are some rose-colored glasses to that, right? There's some jank in that campaign that I don't know if it would stand up to like modern scrutiny if you were building that for an audience. I think folks would find problems and flaws, and I think if you go into that element, I think it's going to take a lot more resources than a single intern to try and really duplicate that on a production level that people would expect today. So maybe that plays part of it. I don't know. Maybe I'm just talking out of my ass and I'm wrong.
No, I think there has been a trend with simulation games heading towards more fidelity in the actual simulation and less so much actual gameplay. I think the prime, example is DCS World. Incredible airplane simulator. The actual game world is effectively dead. And yeah, there's campaigns or whatever. Yeah, you can make it feel more alive, but there's no real gameplay there. There's no living world. And with Falcon, there's a living world. With IL-2 in the campaign, it gives the illusion of a living world a little more than anything in DCS. That's why, I always...
And I mean, Silent Hunter kind of has it, right? Like, there is an element of a living world in Silent Hunter 3.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
But your results don't impact it in the way that Falcon does, which, fine. Like, realistically, a single U-boat commander going ham is not going to change the war.
And I will say, I don't really like the concept of it actually, your actions changing the war in things like Silent Hunter or IL-2. Historical games, I guess, I don't really care for that. Falcon, it kind of makes more sense, because you're controlling more units than one, or you can, right?
Well, and if you don't, you're probably losing, right? If you're not jumping from package to package, making sure that all those raids go successfully, you're probably going to lose the war. If you're really flying it like a single pilot, you're probably going to lose the war.
But yeah, the alt history stuff never interested me. It never interested me, especially when you're playing as one unit and part of just a small cog in a much larger war machine. Like just one pilot on the Eastern Front. Yeah, he may have 300 kills. That doesn't mean anything, in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah, but there's 13,000 ME-109 G6s alone. Like, good luck having 100 extra kills meaning anything.
Yeah, so that's kind of my take on that. But Falcon, it makes sense because it's kind of it's on the Korean Peninsula, so it's a little more isolated. It's a modern jet. I don't know.
And all the packages and flights inner, like if the said mission fails, then the follow-on strike's going to fail because the anti-aircraft is going to tear apart the raid. And, there's a little bit more interlocking to the way the packages are structured in kind of a modern air war, I think, than maybe exists in something like IL, because the world is so much smaller.
Yeah, well, and let's go on to another game. Finnish, I think?
All right. My number 3 here is going to be Railroad Tycoon 3.
Great game, yes.
Yeah, I know we've talked about Railroad Tycoon before on the podcast, so I won't take up too much time. I feel like, so thinking back to Railroad Tycoon 2, thinking back into my memory, that's probably the first video game I ever remember seeing. I remember my dad playing that game on the computer, and it's probably the first game that I ever tried myself. But Railroad Tycoon 3, I think, had a much more impactful nature, I guess, on my love for Tycoon games. When you're building the train tracks, you're building your stations, you're watching the goods flow across the map in that kind of organic matter of down rivers and across the land as they go from, supply and demand kind of areas. So I think that, Railroad Tycoon was probably the defining game for me that started to love the Tycoon genre. It's really I'll keep it at that. I know we've talked about this game extensively, so...
If I was to have my list be a 6, I'd probably have Railroad Tycoon 2 on there. I didn't play it on the PC. I rented it multiple times from Best Buy because I'm old. But I played that on PlayStation also. I actually prefer the graphics of 2 better. I think I like that 2D sprite view a little better than the 3D of the era.
I kind of do too.
But it had similar elements of cities growing based on supply and demand, and if you service a city, it could get bigger. And I'd avoid Chicago and make Milwaukee into a metropolis, because on Wisconsin.
Yeah, the cities growing in Railroad Tycoon 3 was probably one of my favorite things because I just love to see your city become like a 5-star city. You got a bunch of people going back and forth. You're always transporting a bunch of goods. It kind of made the world feel alive, like your decisions were making an impact.
Did 3 have the whole stock market game that 2 had?
Yes.
That was my introduction, I think, growing up to be what's what's short selling? What's split? What happens when a stock splits? How's this work? Why am I always all of my attempts to take over my competitors fail because I don't know what the hell I'm doing?
Yeah, that was my first look at the same kind of stock market mechanics. Or it's like when your company's kind of going broke and investors suspend the dividend, and then me as a kid having no idea what the heck that even means. I'm like why do I care,
That is truly nostalgia.
Whatever. I don't care. Why is this pop-up coming up here? I don't care.
What are they dividing by anyway?
Yeah.
Was 3 made by Firaxis, right? Or was it?
They were all the same. I don't know which one.
Look it up.
I thought at some point they kind of started farming it out. 'Cause I know 2 was.
He says Pop Top Software.
That sounds familiar, yeah.
Like I know who they are. But
Because the series had its origin in Sid Meier.
Yes.
Like Sid Meier's, at least Railroad 1 or whatever was Sid Meier. I think
Who was Railroad 2? Was it also the company, but not Sid Meier?
Pop Top did 2. Wow, there's like 4 developers. So they must have like licensed it out or something.
Was one of the developers on that, the same guy who went on to do Civilization 2, right?
So Sid Meier's Tycoon was the first in the series, and it says designers Sid Meier, Bruce Shelley.
Bruce Shelley?
Oh, okay, so this is what happened. So Railroad Tycoon 1 was made by Microprose and Sid Meier's team. But when Sid Meier left to go to Firaxis, Microprose, a year after Sid left, sold the rights to Pop Top to make the sequel. So that's why Microprose stopped making it, because Microprose effectively started down the path of going defunct, and all the people who had made the original game were now at a new company, so they just licensed it out to Pop Top, who made 2 and 3.
Yeah, it's really fascinating. I guess this is truly a nostalgia trip, but it's really fascinating to just learn more about these games that, they were just games I played. I could not have cared less who designed the game when I was a kid. But now I have at least some interest in that.
So that's all I have to say about Railroad Tycoon 3.
Before we move on, I just want to say that should be an honorable mention for me too, because I remember my father. I kind of like watched my father play. I think number 2, maybe it was even the original. No, it was probably number 2. Number 2 did not have the thing where you actually run out of supply and demand, right? Where 3 has the dynamic supply and demand.
Like, I don't know about run out, but like prices would fluctuate.
Yeah, it has your like the buildings that your station was next to had like a demand, but it never changed. Like price, I don't feel like prices changed and stuff like that. It was always demanding like 2 goods, or always demanding 4 livestock.
Well, I know. So I don't know about the production in the factories, but I do know like homes would change the amount of passengers they would produce based on pre-automobile versus post-automobile. As time passed, there would be changes to some of that stuff, and it would tell you about it.
I mean, my recollection is that number 2 did not have a dynamic economy, whereas you could like actually starve something out and it would like go bankrupt or whatever. Whereas, so 2, everything could be floated by an invisible economy. Whereas 3, they actually tried to make it so that, oh yeah, if that thing doesn't get it, it's actually going to delete itself. It's going to go bankrupt. You won't.
Yeah, I don't know that things would delete, but in 2 you could buy like steel mills or other industrial production facilities, and they could either lose you money or gain you money.
I feel like I do remember businesses, factories, etc., disappearing in 2. They would for sure in 3.
I don't remember 2. It's all 20 years.
I'm quickly looking at the Railroad Tycoon 3 Wikipedia page. Under the campaign section, it has the future campaign, 2025 to 2080.
I'm interested in hearing the next game from Wolfpack 345. He's been quiet over there. I know what he's doing. He's thinking about what he's going to say, how he can defend this awful pick.
He's like, listen, I know this is a strategy podcast, but I'm going to hit you with chess.
Chess is a pretty influential game. There was this Chess Master game. It was like computer chess. I played a lot. That's a nostalgic game right there. Yeah, that's my number 3. No, I'm just kidding. Number 3, Rome Total War, baby.
Hell yeah.
Not that expansion crap that we.
The good thing.
Yeah.
Tell me at least it's with mods.
No.
Why would you need mods?
Barbarian Invasion,
No.
like all the
Unmodded.
Total War realism,
Unmodded.
those were great.
Unmodded.
Like, you understand how wrong you are, THG. I mean, you may not be wrong in your own brain, but everybody in the world knows that the original is better.
It's bad.
THG likes to act like he was such a Rome expert when he was, 14 playing Rome? Get out of here.
I think secretly this is all just a bit, and he's like, he's dug a trench. It's like too late for him to back down,
Yeah.
so he's probably like, oh no. He probably loved the original.
Rome won, I don't know, best Total War game. Has it aged the best? Objectively, no. I've gone.
Medieval Total War was better than Rome, to be clear, but
Okay, it's my time. I have
This guy.
I have the talking stick, okay? Rome Total War. I spent, I don't know how many thousand hours probably just constantly playing this game. So many nostalgic memories of just Pontus being incredibly powerful and me just like smashing a head against a wall. Because once you get in that late stage game, the AI just builds stack after stack of massive armies. I'm making it sound really fun, but it is. It ignited a love for Rome, and no, it's not the most historically accurate. Like, obviously, you just take one look at Egypt and you're like, okay, but it has character, and that's what matters. A lot of the gameplay mechanics are good. The battles are awesome. Game looked beautiful. Yeah, good RTS, 10 out of 10. The expansion, and it had a good set of expansions. Alexander was okay. It was fine. It was fun to play around for a couple of hours. And Barbarian Invasion was suitable.
It was interesting to see the units change, right, when you got to the new expansion.
Even the units change as you progress throughout.
Oh, the Maris reforms.
It's good. And I understand the critique of the three family system, but it did make the Civil War a lot of fun. When you finally built up and you were like,
yes,
I'm ready to go to war with my Roman brothers. Like, that Civil War moment is just, it's amazing. It's really good.
Yes. Okay. This is what we got to say.
It would be better if it was an actual civil war, though. It wasn't.
Look, the point is that this is a game, and that is like, okay, a lot of games struggle with late game content. You become so powerful. What do you do? And Rome Total War actually had a solution for that. A brilliant solution, one that worked really well. And it's one that they continue to employ. I mean, they do the same thing in like Shogun, right? Okay, at the very end, now you got to go take out. Everyone's going to attack you, right? So it's brilliant. Whether it's historically accurate or not, probably not. But it's just a really good way of keeping the player's interest in a late game, like reviving your interest. Like, I remember saving the game and being like, okay, this is the turn. I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
Like, that's...
And I have 4, like, I forget the exact name of the agent, but I'm going to bribe 4 of their armies right off the bat outside their cities.
Yes! I was going to say, like, you had this problem with all these enemy units. Like, my economy... you just got all the trade set up for the Mediterranean. You're making tons of money. I had millions of whatever, ducats, whatever they're called, denarii. And I would just bribe all the armies. I would just send diplomats everywhere.
I mean, even small things like that, the modern Total War games don't even do. It's like, you look at the roads you've built on the campaign map, and you see little carriages driving on the roads. And the more carriages there are, like, the more you're trading. The more ships you see crossing your trade routes, the more you're trading. I don't know. The world felt... It made... You had an impact. And I really do not feel that way with modern Total War games. You build your city, and it looks cool. It's like a spectacle on the campaign map, but you don't see the roads you ordered built having an impact, really. Besides just number go up, you don't actually see it happening. So
I've been talking a fair bit, but let me just merge mine with yours.
No, I figured.
Yeah, Rome Total War was on there. And
was it your number 3 or was it higher?
So I didn't have a real good order to this. I've been trying to order it just on the fly. Technically, I guess it was my number 2.
Okay.
But yeah, okay, so I just have this one memory. Might be my most vivid memory of all my gaming history. This one time where I was in Egypt playing as Scipio, the guys who start next to Carthage. And by the way, I think they're the worst people to start. Well, I don't know. Maybe they're better than...
They're difficult because you have to, like, build a navy.
Yeah.
As the Julii, which is always what I played because they're red.
Yeah.
Roman's red. I don't know. But yeah, the Scipii, I guess, are a little more difficult, huh?
The Brudii are actually the best. I mean, objectively,
I
I played as all 3, and they are the best. It's the easiest to win as them. But this was the Scipii, and I made it all the way around to Egypt. And I remember I had this one super elite army with 20, full 20 stack, insane, past the Mars reforms already. And I went to attack this one city that had, I think, towards the late game, every army is like a 20 stack. Just like this army, this example. I sieged a city. And the turn before I was going to actually attack them, they moved 3 other full stack armies next to their city, and they attacked me.
Wow.
So this is insane. I'll never forget this. This is number one gaming moment of my life. So then what I did is when I was attacked, all these AI armies are pouring on from the sides. and I steamroll the city, conquer it, and then use their own walls to defend against them, and I won like a heroic victory. It was just awesome.
Yeah. I mean, I was actually recently playing the remaster, and the remaster's not perfect. I really am annoyed they decided to change the UI.
Yeah, me too.
I wish the UI was exactly as it was, just rescaled, remastered, compatible with other resolutions.
They changed it. I feel like they made it more like mobile friendly or something, because there's just a lot of in there.
I think the first thing they did with the remaster, like I don't know that they called it the remaster, but I think the company that did the remastered is the one who ported the game over to iPad.
Yep.
It's visible.
And so I'm assuming they just took the work they did for that and were like, all right, now we're going to post it on Steam as the remastered version, basically.
Well, there are significant differences. Like, the remaster looks really good. But yeah, the UI, it's like menus within menus. And like that original UI, you click up, you open a scroll, and you see everything you need. Like, you look at a city and you see exactly what's causing issues there, like how much squalor, etc.
Yeah, why do they hide shit? Man.
Yeah, and just hiding that behind menus, that is bad UI design. Any game devs, out there, just that original Rome Total War UI, and Medieval, since they're essentially, Medieval is just Rome, reskinned, which it may ruffle some feathers, but I don't know. It's just, you open up the scroll and you see everything right off the bat. And the symbols, you don't even have to hover over it to know what it means. You see a little rat symbol, like that ain't good, And now,
unless it's Ratatouille.
Yeah, unless it's Ratatouille. But generally, the Roman rats are not Remy. Yeah, I don't know. But the remaster still is fun. I was playing it, and I was playing it with mods. A lot of the mods for Rome are very good. And a lot of the mods for Rome Total War have aged rather well, like Europa Barbarum. That's the one I played quite a bit of, and that mod is phenomenal. So, and that was for the original one. Unfortunately, they're not going to port it over to the remaster, but yeah, good game.
Yeah, do you mind if I go next? Anyways, okay, Rome Total War. I'm not going to use this one, but I kind of had 6, so that means I'm just going to nix that one from my list, even though it's definitely on there.
This is going to be a long podcast.
Well, we'll keep this one short. I'll just say I have on here The Sims 2, which also 2004, Rome Total War, 2004, a lot of games, 2004. I'm starting to notice a trend.
What was going on in 2004?
Yeah, they had some good stuff. Anyway, it's also coincides with the fact that I was in college at that time and did not care about going to class, so I had a lot of potential for creating nostalgia around that period of time.
Basically, Single Malt Strategy Podcast declares 2004 the best year for video games.
I would actually, well, we'll see at the end of this, but yeah, I would probably second that.
Nope.
He says nope.
Anyway, The Sims 2 is a great game. I have some nostalgia associated with this, which is a little bit negative. I was given this game by a friend of mine in high school, Ryan Delaney, rest in peace, who a year later was killed in a drunk driving car accident. So I can't not think about The Sims 2 when I think about games I was playing in high school. It was his gift. So thank you, Ryan, wherever you are. And also, besides that story, I remember that this was one of the few games that I could play with my siblings. That everyone... she said that kind of heavy. Yeah, I did. Yeah, sorry. But no, that's, I think, nostalgia.
I don't know how to follow that up. That's fuck.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, there we go. These things happen. No, they shouldn't. But the game on its own, even without that story... It's the first game I could play with my sisters. My sisters enjoyed designing houses. They enjoyed... this is a game which is much more from your stereotypical image, at least back in 2000, pre-2000, without trying to get too politically correct and all that. But I feel like a lot of the games I played were predominantly played by guys, and at least the girls in my family had no interest in them. And The Sims 2 was the first where we had common ground. I remember going on vacation with my siblings, and we would be with graph paper designing our houses for when we were going to go back home and play The Sims 2 again. So I don't know, this definitely has some nostalgia, some real positive nostalgia associated with it. In fact, it's something I could even bring up with my sisters today. Do you remember designing those houses on graph paper? So, and it's a very good game too. I think that you can play it in so many different ways. I used to play it kind of like a Tycoon. I would have a specific family household set up. Like one guy was the one who would stay home and do all the cooking and cleaning. And then, I was very progressive. Yeah. And then the two other guys would go to work. They didn't have to do any cleaning or whatever because they were 100% career focused, so I could make the most amount of money. It was like a perfect Tycoon setup.
He's min-maxing the lives of 3 people.
I was. It was awesome.
It's funny you say that about the family piece, though, Tortuga, because like my sister was not big into games. She had an N64 that she would never let me use, but she had like 2 games for it. It was like she got it for like Mario Kart, and then she played like Crash Bandicoot on the PlayStation a little bit. But the first game that she like went deep down a rabbit hole was actually The Sims 2.
Boom.
Now I played more The Sims 1. I went to a sleepover and they had The Sims 1 and we played it all night long, and like I loved that game. But I think by the time 2 came out, I was kind of a little less interested, but that was definitely a game that really hooked my sister, and she had so many expansions for that. I'm sure my mom still has discs just like somewhere squirreled away for that. But yeah, it definitely resonated with my sister as well, who was not a big gamer, except when The Sims was involved, I guess.
Yeah, it really appeals to like everyone because, like I said, you can play it in so many different ways. You can play it as like a dating sim. You can play it as, in my case, a factory system.
It's like that Always Sunny episode where they start a factory in the basement.
That's right. That was inspired by my way of playing The Sims. In fact. Yeah.
Yeah, I can imagine.
I vaguely remember my sister making me play it every now and then because she wanted someone else to make houses in the neighborhood, because those games, like, it's like, well, you have to network, right? Like,
yes.
To get promotions, you have to have a certain number of friends or whatnot, and like...
Oh, I made max the shit out of that, too. I built a bunch of, like, shell families just so I had, like, with 8 kids. No, they were adults. 8 adults, so I had more friends, because the career tracking at The Sims 2, you need a certain amount of friends.
The Sims 2 is the most realistic reflection of capitalism.
These people sound so miserable.
No, they were happy, damn it.
No, but The Sims 2, and I don't want to go political, Sims 2, the most realistic representation of being an adult in your career. Like, networking is important, baby. Don't forget about making friends.
What Sims game are they even on now?
I think it's still 4. They've been on that forever.
Really? And they're just like doing DLC, right?
Yeah, exactly. They really lean into the DLC stuff, so it's really not The Sims 4.
I mean, it started with 2, though. 2 had so many discs, an add-on.
I can tell you the ones that were important, because I remember there was 2 expansions. I mean, I might not remember all their names, but there was the IKEA expansion. I remember that actually brought some value to the stuff you could buy. A lot of it was crap, but that one was good.
One of my coworkers for a while was the product manager that brought The Sims 4 to I think it was to Xbox. So I had some interesting conversations with him. But
like, how do you sleep with yourself at night?
I never played it on the Xbox, so I wouldn't know.
I just feel like their business model is so insanely like DLC.
Well, that's another interesting topic. Just DLC in general, because there are pros to these games receiving funding over time.
Let's have this as a different topic. For real though, I think we could have a good discussion about that.
Yeah, agreed. Who's next?
What am I up to? 2?
Yeah.
So I was going to go with War in the Pacific Admirals Edition, and then I realized I don't know if that's really a nostalgia thing, because I'm like still playing it a lot. But I do have nostalgia for Gary Grigsby's War in the East. War in Russia is what I'm thinking of. So before Gary Grigsby started publishing through Matrix Games, he made games, and I think this might have been published by SSI as well, which Joel Billings, who's like the 2x3 business side person, was, I believe, one of the founders of SSI. So that's kind of where their relationship came from. But yeah, so War in Russia was like the predecessor to War in the East. And then they also had a war, like Pacific War as well. So it's kind of like those 2 games, I would say, is up there. And those were the first, like, I don't have a ton to say about them other than they were the first experience that I had with like true deep grognard games, where it's like you're tracking individual types of tanks on the Eastern Front. Every single division is included on the Eastern Front. Hundreds and hundreds of units, and you were fighting the war out in small time increments. And it was just I remember just it was one of those games where it was like one more turn. Oh my God, it's 5 a.m. and I've got to go to high school. And it was pretty cool too, because at the time, I don't know if they're still doing this, but at the time, Matrix Games actually, they must have had a license for it or something, because they offered like legit, not even like pirating or torrenting or whatever, like they legit offered free downloads for War in Russia and Pacific War, which did a similar thing in the Pacific War, same level of fidelity, where I think that was like their attempt to try and market like War in the Pacific and War in the East, the newer versions of the game, to be like, hey, if you download these free predecessor versions, you can get a sense for like what this kind of a game might be like. But just like that whole series of those games, I mean, even War in the West, like all of those Gary Grigsby games that you could download, at least back then, legitimately for free, they just introduced me to like a whole different world of wargaming that I think really sort of speaks to the kind of things I'm interested in. Certainly don't follow your UI codes. Like those are games where menu upon menu upon menu, but they were the first games that felt like, wow, this is capturing the scale of the Second World War in a way that makes it feel like it probably should, even for a top level commander, as opposed to most games around that time period would be the scale, because computing power was so limited, the scale would be so much less. So I guess what I'm saying is all of the Gary Grigsby War in the series. That's a cop-out.
All right, there you go. Some guy commented on one of my videos. It was a submarine game. He said, this looks like work. And then I checked out his channel, and all he was playing was War in the Pacific. And I just thought that was pretty funny. Anyway. I mean, those games they're brutal. Oh, gosh. I played it was like the Aleutian Islands scenario in War in the Pacific. I can understand why you're nostalgic for it. It is an impressive feat. Well,
I would also say the War in the games were, in my opinion, War in Russia was far more approachable than War in the East. It had a lot of the same detail, but it was not, I remember I just picked it up. I didn't know what I was doing. And as the Russians, I was just like, hey, this seems like maybe in June, I should not be trying to fight the Germans on the border. I'm just going to fall all the way back to this river line, a little bit in front of Moscow, and just start building a line here with all the units, build a cohesive line, and try and hold. And it worked. Like, you're not managing the economy in that game. Production occurs, and you kind of need to be aware of some things, and you need to keep an eye on like attrition and units. It was not... I'm sure most gamers would feel like it was overwhelming, but it was not overwhelming in the way that, and maybe it's just because I had more time in high school as opposed to where I'm at now in my life, but I didn't feel like I had a ton of difficulty learning how to play that game. I struggle even now with like War in the East and War in the East 2, set aside time to actually play them, to actually learn what I'm doing. They do feel much more complex. The UIs are a little bit better, but like there's more to cover and more to manage and more to like be aware of. And I don't know what of it matters and what of it doesn't and what I can ignore and what I can't. But like, it just, I for some strange reason, I feel like those games were just, I don't know. They seemed a little bit easier to pick up and just fiddle your way through and play. So that's my number 2.
All right, moving on.
My turn. All right. My number 2 is Silent Hunter 2.
2?
Part of the reason I picked 2 is I had a feeling someone might want to talk about Silent Hunter 3.
Nah.
Which I do love Silent Hunter 3 more than I actually love Silent Hunter 2. But kind of like Railroad Tycoon 2, it was one of the first games I remember watching as like a video game, watching my dad play that game. And sometime earlier this year or whatever, I watched a YouTube video of someone playing all the scenarios. When I remember playing Silent Hunter 2, it's definitely a game, how we talked about before. I have nostalgia for it. Looking at it now, it's like, man, this is actually kind of bare bones. I didn't realize the game didn't have a campaign like Silent Hunter 3 did, in terms of you sail around and you do your own stuff. Everything was scripted missions in Silent Hunter 2, so I didn't remember that until watching this, gameplay. I do like how the game kind of just sets you in the certain compartments of the U-boat. You can really only see outside the periscope or through the binocs on the bridge. Everything was pretty much just the screen. And I do kind of like that simplicity of a game like that. It makes sense for like if you made some game on an app now, that kind of just like the screen of the compartments makes sense. Obviously there's limitations of games. Silent Hunter 2 came out in 2001. So there's definitely limitations there. And one thing I was thinking about was Silent Hunter 2 going from these 2D screens, and then you had Silent Hunter 3 going into a 3D world. We had Railroad Tycoon 2 going in like that isometric 2D sprite, and then you had the big jump to Railroad Tycoon 3, which was a 3D world. So like these games, like this time period of games, this early 2000s, really made some leaps in terms of what was presented to the gamers. I really just picked Silent Hunter 2 because I think, I can expect Wolf is going to talk about Silent Hunter 3, and I like Silent Hunter 3 more, but I want to give Silent Hunter 2 the credit of kind of taking it was like the first one to do German U-boats, because the original Silent Hunter was in the Pacific, which it'd be nice if there was a game that went back to that. But
so it was the first Silent Hunter game, but there were very similar. Like Aces of the Deep, I think, was very similar.
Yeah, Aces of the Deep's it's a fair bit older, 1995, 1993. So
you think Wolf's looking these up, but he just knows these dates.
Well, something like that. It's early 90s, I think.
I will say Silent Hunter 2 is the first submarine game I ever bought a copy of. And I remember enjoying it, but when Silent Hunter 3 came out and you could it's like I can just sail wherever, like I get a grid and I'm just supposed to patrol it. Like that broke my brain. Cuz I think at the time 2 came out, like so many games were really scenario driven. I think developers thought like that's what people want to play. And I know Silent Hunter 1 kind of had the patrol zone, but I hadn't played it.
Wasn't that all just inspired by Silent Service though?
Silent Service had a more dynamic campaign.
That's true, definitely.
Aces of the Deep did as well. But a lot of these games, the subsims of that time, like Silent Hunter 1 and 2, also Dangerous Waters and Subcommand, were all scenario based. Which are two subsims that they're honorable mentions, especially Subcommand for me. And Jane 688, it was scenario based as well. It was more popular, but yeah, Aces of the Deep's the big one I can think of that had a kind of dynamic campaign. The Silent Service campaigns, it's different than Silent Hunter. Because you just have your map, you go around. It's more similar to Cold Waters, where you track your boat on the map, and then you get plucked into an engagement.
Yeah, okay, you're right. That's true. I guess I meant it only from the fact that you have this open world.
Sure.
But you're right, that's a big difference if you're open world in first person or going to like some completely separate strategic map.
Right, like the Silent Hunter, we'll talk about it later maybe, I don't know. But the Silent Hunter 3 open world where you use your time compression and then you dive. I don't know, you're just doing that all in the one world and then get a hydrophone contact. Like you can do that all in the control room. That's pretty novel.
Yeah, you're right.
So
I'm sure we won't talk about that again.
No.
We'll never talk about Silent Hunter 3 again.
No. But yeah, Silent Hunter 2, I had a lot of fun in that one as well. I played it after Silent Hunter 3.
Ooh.
And I was disappointed upon playing it and being like, oh, it's just scenarios. Like you said. The scenarios are cool, but yeah, it is indeed just scenarios. But the graphics are cool. I do agree with what Finnish was saying, that style of subsim where you go to the control room and you have all your gauges aligned, just however, like whatever, for gameplay purposes. Kind of like 688 or Subcommand did the same thing.
I never played 688, but I played Fast Attack by Sierra, I think it was. Played the hell out of that game.
Well, 688 is very similar to Dangerous Waters.
Yeah, you have your gauges set up, and you just go to different stations, and they're 2D stations that you click around on. I am surprised that it seems like retro games are becoming more popular. Like smaller games made by smaller teams. I'm surprised that Silent Hunter 2 formula has not been replicated in just a smaller subsim. I guess the new... Oh gosh, I'm blanking. The new Microprose title gets kind of close to Silent Service 2.
Silent Depth 2 Pacific.
There's always a silent and then something. Then a number, most likely.
Exactly.
Or water. It's silent or water, you got those.
And then the location where it happened. Yeah, like you said, Wolf, I for Silent Hunter 2, I do like that once you're on that, like, you're in that compartment, you're at the periscope, you're looking at the gauges or whatever in the control room, everything is right there.
Yeah.
Everything that you see is things that you interact with to dive, raise the periscope, fire your torpedoes. It was all just concise, simple, concise, user-friendly. It's all there.
Was Silent Hunter 2 the one that had an interface with Destroyer Command, or was that Silent Hunter 3?
Sure did. That was Silent Hunter 2, which you could play PvP or whatever with the Destroyer Command game, which I've only dabbled in, unfortunately. I kind of wish I played more of that at the time, but here we are. No, it's a cool time.
I mean, these are games from back in the day where you'd walk into a Best Buy or a Circuit City and you would see these games on the shelf. Like, that's the other piece of nostalgia for me, is like, this was back when you had Sims and war games and you bought them in frickin' stores. Like, they were quasi-mainstream, at least in the sense that you could be on Main Street and see them.
The last thing I wanted to say, last thing, Silent Hunter 2 had some of the best, like, in-game music. I'm gonna link it here in our little chat, but like the menu music was just so good.
It does go hard. I use it in videos frequently because it's a banger.
Silent Hunter 2 for me is almost more that main menu music than anything else. It really set the tone of the game.
I love how creepy the music was when you went. I think it was like the settings menu or whatever. Like the music got really creepy, and it was like the soundtrack is like scared me. I remember it like, who's next?
You.
I'm next. Okay, this is just perfect tie-in. I remember thinking the Japanese music in IL-2 Pacific Fighters was incredibly creepy as well and unnerving, and it gives a similar feeling to Silent Hunter 2's music. And yeah, that's my number 2 or whatever. It's IL-2, the original, baby. Along with Pacific Fighters, which released, I don't know, shortly after, a couple of years later. But that original IL-2 game, for those of you that don't know, IL-2 is a flight simulator. That original IL-2 game really ignited my interest in the Eastern Front, and it was probably one of the first. It wasn't my first flight sim, but it was definitely the most influential and the one I spent so much time in. But yeah, IL-2. What's there more to say?
IL-2, 1946, that was, wasn't that a compilation of, like, the gold version of, like, IL-2, the original? And
Exactly, and I have vivid memories, so I remember getting the first IL-2, and I have vivid memories of forcing my parents to buy the Forgotten Battles expansion pack for this game, and I don't know, I just played the absolute crap out of it, along with the more dynamic campaigns that were quite fun. At the time, I wasn't as interested in the Pacific, so I didn't play as much of the Pacific Fighter stuff. Kind of like what Finn was saying, just younger, and I was like, Germans, put me in a 109, baby. That's all I wanted to fly, really.
Very interesting that you say that, because I usually wanted to play as the Americans, but, you know, you do you.
Well, and there was no real Western Front. And like, if there was a Western Front, I'd play more as the Americans.
They had much larger air battles, right?
Yeah, they were pretty large overall, I'd say.
Because that's one of the things that and maybe it goes back to the fidelity argument. When you're rivet counting and everything is so focused on the fidelity of your individual plane, the rest of the world suffers. Because like, I do feel like IL-2 Great Battles, one of my critiques is it does feel like most of the campaign stuff, the battles are fairly small in terms of number of aircraft engaged.
Yeah. And that's part of, like, again, you're right. It is a fidelity thing. Like, all the AI pilots in IL-2 Great Battles are under the same exact limitations that the player is. So you don't have UFO, behavior by AI aircraft, which absolutely happened in the original IL-2. There is some wonky behavior in that game, but
it's still cool to see like 40, Stukas go in on that port attack in Leningrad or whatever the scenario. There's a scenario like that, isn't there? I thought I saw you playing something like that, Tortuga, at some point.
That was in the latest game.
I thought it was the 1946, which
No, I think Wolf and I did that one together. I don't remember. I did a dive bombing.
Maybe. I don't know. I do like Great Battles quite a bit.
I'm not saying Great Battles is good. I think the older games had a sense of scale. Even like Battle of Britain 2. That was another one of those old flight sims that had scale that you don't see in newer games.
Another one with a dynamic campaign.
Yep, yeah.
Yeah, I played a bit of that one too.
European Air War had, I've never played that one, but I was told that also had like hundreds of planes.
Yeah, the scale on that one's kind of unmatched, but like it does go back to the fidelity thing. But yeah, IL-2 IL-2 original, and then later 1946. I still remember, like, the music's absolutely amazing. I still, like, remember the original IL-2, like, games used to have intro movies, which I guess has gone out of fashion. I still remember that original IL-2 intro movie, and it was just, like, the start of Operation Barbarossa. That was the whole thing, because the original one only had, like, 3 campaigns. So you could play as an IL-2, a Yak, and then there was a 109 campaign. And I played the 109 campaign over and over again. And then the IL-2 one as well. Was never a big fan of the Yaks early on, but I've grown to appreciate those janky Soviet fighters.
I was compiling an honorable mention list along with my main list, and I had Aces Over the Pacific on that.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know. It's probably from the early 90s. It's really old, but yeah. That was probably my first experience. Anyway, it didn't make the list, but I remember playing. I actually think we played multiplayer with not LAN, but it was like TCP connection. Yeah.
Oh, cool. Fun.
Anyway.
Yep, that's my number 2. And moving on.
Oh, I guess to me. Okay, good. Well, when did the cutoff for you guys occur? Like, what? I have a game here, which is a 2007 game I was playing in 2007. Is that already beyond nostalgia? Is that too recent?
No, that's good. That's forever ago.
This is essentially this is where I cut off, because I do have some games even after this, even a year after this I would mention otherwise. But I'm going to go with Hearts 2 with all the expansions, so Doomsday and Armageddon. The reason why this is nostalgic for me, first of all, it was the first Paradox game I had really played. That's not entirely true. I was somewhat familiar with some titles that I just didn't really dive into. I had seen them. But this is the first game that I spent time to learn, and I became a hardcore strategy gamer, I think maybe partly because of Hearts of Iron 2. I love it. I think it's actually pretty approachable, at least for a Hearts of Iron game, but it has all the depth if you want to get deeper and you want to make your own divisions with your specific brigades, and it's awesome. So yeah, I played the crap out of this for an entire year when I was in Spain. I basically played nothing but this game because it's the only game that would run on my laptop. So
So it won by default.
It did, but I loved it, and I played it after I got back. I remember the big campaign I actually did. Again, a lot of these nostalgia moments are connected with multiplayer, and for me, often with my father, because I have no friends, at least not until after college. But yeah, so I played a campaign with my father where he was Italy and I was Germany, and we took over the whole world. In fact, there's times... It's been a while, but maybe like 5 years ago even, my dad even mentioned that, yeah, I mean, every now and then I pick up that campaign, and even though you're not in it, the AI just plays as you, as Germany, and I still go around like conquering forgotten provinces in like South America or something like that. It's pretty funny. So, yeah, Hearts of Iron 2, good game, and definitely nostalgia.
I'm surprised that didn't make Finn's list.
Hearts of Iron 2 is a game I did not play.
Oh, really? Oh, my bad. Never mind.
I started with 3.
Oh, it was 3.
3 could have made the list if I made a longer list, but I don't feel like it beat out anything on my current list.
I have a disc of 2 I found at a half-price books somewhere not that long ago, and I was like, meh. Well, it was more than 10 years ago, so I guess it was a long time ago. But I remember like trying to play it, and I was just like, I'm not really in the mood for this at this time.
I think it's a great game, and I think I don't know. It really had... Well, I don't know. This is not an episode about overselling Hearts of Iron 2. Otherwise, I would, I think. But it is a very good game. It has very good balance, I think, as far as like trying not to get too much into detail. People obviously pulled back or resisted some of the complexity of Hearts of Iron 3. I think if you had played Hearts of Iron 2, Hearts of Iron 3 was a much more natural thing to pick up and play. THG, would you like to reveal your number 1?
Yeah, my number 1 is Sid Meier's Gettysburg, which is a real-time tactical war game made by Firaxis. I think it was their first game, and it covers the Civil War. I think, it holds up.
Wait, Sid Meier's Gettysburg covers the Civil War?
Well, covers the Battle of Gettysburg in the Civil War, yeah.
It's cool that a game is actually covering the Spanish Civil War.
Yeah, I know. What war? Tell us.
You know, someone commented on the last podcast. They're like, it's really funny how THG, you just got roasted by some of the other guests with your takes on tower defense, but so I guess we got another episode of this. But
well, you did say that Frostpunk was a tower defense game.
I asked if you needed a tower, and I don't know if you do.
Guys, Wolfpack Finnish is Frostpunk.
It's like just surviving the elements.
Yeah, that's what someone else said. It's a survival game. If you're going to call it anything,
right? And at its core, tower defense games are survival games.
Tower defense game is the monkeys throwing the darts at the balloon.
Yeah,
that's my favorite one.
Typical example.
Well, anyway, so Sid Meier's Gettysburg, my number one game. I think this is still the best example of what a war game can be when it gets adequate investment and is very well designed. There is so much in the game. It's a scenario-based game, so you don't fight the battle out in real time. But basically, it's like you fight individual portions of the Battle of Gettysburg out. They link together. They're dynamic to a point, right? Like the scenarios are not dynamic, but the direction you go down the campaign is based off the prior battles. And it influenced pretty much every real-time tactical war game that came after it, be it the Take Command series, which was developed out of it, the Great Battles series for the Napoleonic games, which came out of it, the Ultimate General games all very clearly have inspiration from it. I think it's also one of those few games where you can see a high level of production value. This was one of those. This was in the era of full motion video acting between battles where you'd have, actors kind of explaining what was going on. It had this brilliant, way of showing you where on the battlefield you were and what was going on based on this map that they would show you in each mission briefing that kind of allowed you to follow the battle on almost like an atlas type map. It was brilliant in so many ways. It was so well polished. I don't think any war game has ever risen to this level of polish and finish since then. And it's what you would expect if you ever had a war game with kind of, it wasn't really a AAA game, but like if you were to give a war game the budget it needs to make it as good as it can be with all the modern design concepts of its era, like that would be this game. And they ended up doing Antietam after that, which was a sequel which did not perform as well. They tried to do like an all online digital distribution, which I think was part of the reason it didn't do well. Also, a lot of that polish around briefings and things faded away because it was a 1-day battle versus a 3-day battle, so a lot of that storytelling faded away. And then unfortunately, Sid Meier's he wanted to do a Waterloo game, but EA, who was their publisher at the time, said, "Why don't you do something else?" And so he did Alpha Centauri after. But yeah, I think Sid Meier's Gettysburg is my number one.
It's a good number one.
Yeah, you had some really high praise for this game.
It is good. I found a way to get it running maybe a year or two ago, and I played a lot of it still, and it still holds up.
Well, I look forward to watching this episode on the YouTube so I can watch gameplay when we talk about Gettysburg.
Yeah, the graphics are obviously dated, and some of the user interface is a little clunky because it does have some crash issues now on a modern system, but it is very good.
Well, with that, let's hop over to Finn's number one.
All right, my number one game is Civilization 3.
Thank God. Oh, 3? Oh, okay.
3 was the first of the series that I played, so that's kind of why it's on this list. The gaming memories from 3, basically, it solidified myself as playing the Civilization series to the present day. Even last month, I was playing Civ 6, even though I don't really like Civ 6, but that's a different story. Civ 3, I don't even know what to say about Civ 3. It was a grid system. The series has just changed so much. But, man, Civ 3, I think about it now, and, it's really not that great of a game.
Well,
I would hate to say it, but because you had the pollution that spread, you had the spider web of roads and railroads. You were constantly your improvements on the map were really limited to mines and farms. That's what you could do. A lot of the units were pretty good. I don't feel like I remember combat being very, I don't want to say combat in the Civ games aren't very in-depth anyway, but I do remember times where, like, if you had a really low-level unit, if you had just enough of them, you could still beat, like, a really modern unit. And they eventually kind of fixed that in the other Civ games. But for me, Civ 3 was basically just the start of me loving this genre of building cities, expanding, going through the research, just creating your own world and your own story. And that's what got me hooked. And there were times, like, I'd play this game, on the computer. Then I would go to school and I would get, like, the graph grid paper, and I would just start drawing maps. This is probably where I started, like, drawing maps as just for fun as a kid, and sometimes I do that now. But I would try to play Civ on paper. Like, I'd be like, oh, my unit's going to go over here. What did I find? And then I, like, draw a little river, draw some mountains. And it was all just created, and I could have done whatever the heck I wanted to. I think of, like, all the authors and stuff who do world building and create maps and create, like, these vivid stories that they try to make realistic. For me, I was kind of the same way, just as a kid doing it, basically because of Civ 3.
I'm really glad that you brought this one up because Civ did not make my list. It's outside. I did have it as an honorable mention. For me, it was Civilization 2. But yeah, it's such an iconic thing. I don't know how I didn't play more of this. But it's really not a nostalgia thing for me. It's just those are definitely good games, and I think as the thing which eventually led you to play a lot of Civilization style games, from that perspective, I could see that I'm glad at least that Civilization 2 was an honorable mention for the same reason. That definitely did lead me to play a lot of other Civilization games. Although for me, probably the first one I played a lot of Civilization 2, but I probably really started eating up my time when it got to Civilization 4. And maybe this is testament to the fact that Civilization 2 didn't really sink in with me. I didn't even play Civilization 3.
Civilization 4 doesn't have, like, a lasting memory for me as 3 did. And I think 5 is a better game than 6.
5 is the best. Oh, completely agree.
Until 7 comes out.
Well, we'll see about that. I don't have high hopes for 7 at the moment.
No, I think THC is being sarcastic.
So, yeah, for me, the Civ series was definitely 5 and then 3. I don't even remember what the heck Civ 4 was about. So,
but again, thank you for bringing it up because I think having 4 people on the Single Malt Strategy podcast and not bringing up Civilization as a nostalgia game would have felt a little bit weird to me. So I'm glad I made it. Thank you. Thank you for not failing me. Thank you.
Thank you, Finn.
You're welcome.
Well, I'll go on to my number 1. You all guessed it. It's Silent Hunter 3.
Wow.
And a lot of this...
Surprise.
Yeah, I know. Amazing. Real shocker. I was introduced to this game by my father around the time it released. I have memories playing it with my dad, watching him play it, playing it myself, having my brother play along with me as well. I don't know. I still remember the first aircraft carrier I sank in that game. And from minus all the revolutionary aspects, like the dynamic campaign, the 3D interior, the animated crew. Apart from all of that, the game also, like, is incredibly moddable, which allowed it to age really well. And it has a very natural difficulty curve that you would expect out of a traditional video game. The game starts off relatively easy, that difficulty ramps up significantly as the game goes on, which, I don't know, it's a good gameplay, good game design. I don't know, that's it. Lots of variety, all sorts of equipment you can use. It is like the most comprehensive submarine sim, I think, released.
I could totally put that on my list too. I have so I played Silent Hunter 2, and I think because that was 2D, right? At least the interior stuff. Although, wasn't it all interior? Anyway, I played 2. That played fine. I had a laptop with an integrated graphics card, which I don't think Silent Hunter 3 was supposed to allow you to play. But I have vivid memories in college of playing that game on a laptop that could not play it. I was playing it at like 7 and 8 frames per second. Like, it was a chore to play, and I still would play it because it was so unique, and it was just, I'd never really experienced sort of a game like that. Maybe Falcon was probably the closest thing to that for me, but I remember just absolutely loving that game.
Yeah, it's easily my. I know it's like we're doing most nostalgic game, but it is my favorite game of all time, hands down. Yeah, and it obviously kickstarted an interest in history that is still going strong. I do also quickly want to mention that my last 3 games all had sequels, or not
Successors, yeah.
that were all horrible. A 3-year time frame. IL-2 released Cliffs of Dover, which was a bomb. It was not good.
Oh, you're skipping 4?
Silent Hunter 5 actually came out before Cliffs of Dover. Silent Hunter 5, not good. Silent Hunter 4 is good. I got Silent Hunter 4 for my birthday. I still remember that. And then Rome 2 Total War, another horrible launch. It's just like in the span of 3 games, my top 3 or 3 years, for 3 or 4 years, my top 3 nostalgic games had just horrible releases. That's where the cynicism started.
Where did it all go wrong?
That's where I'm gonna leave it. I was looking at that list and I was like, that's kind of funny.
There's another reason why Silent Hunter 3 is, very importantly, at least on somebody's, should have been yours or mine, and that's because that's the way that Wolfpack and I know each other.
I was going to mention that too. Yeah.
Oh, good.
Yeah, I was thinking that. Yep, we know each other because of Silent Hunter. So this all started because of Silent Hunter.
And I only know Wolfpack, and I know Wolfpack through Tortuga, who knows him through Silent Hunter.
That's right.
And THD just tagged along once he realized I had a YouTube channel.
Whoa.
Because before then, I was a nobody. Yeah, I said it.
I'm pretty sure our first interaction was a Quiplash where...
Oh, yeah, cut that.
Look, the funny thing is, this is true nostalgia. When I first contacted Wolfpack 345, I think my channel size was like 5 times larger than his. Oh, have the roles have switched.
It is interesting. Yeah, and those old... I can't believe you commented on those videos. Those old Silent Hunter videos I did.
I hope did you take them down? Did you say?
They're unlisted, so if you have the link, you can watch them. But if you can't, you can't.
Oh man, they're gold. You can hear the 14-year-old version of you in them. It's just awesome.
It was the mic. It made me.
Guys, today we're going to torpedo launch.
Oh, brother. Yeah, that's it. Anyway, moving on.
Silent Hunter 3 is one of the greatest games of all.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Well, a lot of these games, I think, because I could also say Falcon 4.0 was pretty impactful too. I think that people routinely talk about the campaign in that. So.
All right. Anyway, moving on. I would love to hear how Tortuga and THD met, but I'm sure it wasn't over such a phenomenal game.
No.
Such as Silent Hunter 3. But what is your number 1 game, Mr. Tortuga Power?
Well, it's real gotcha. It's real gotcha journalism. It's not one game. It's a trifecta, but it's basically Blizzard games. When I think about my childhood,
Warcraft, I'm guessing.
Yeah, I'm going to specifically say Warcraft 2. Warcraft 1 is the first video game I ever owned. It's the first one I ever played. That wasn't on my own. I played things that my father had installed on. I didn't even know how to install a video game or whatever. So Warcraft 1 was the first one that initiated on my own. And Warcraft 2 I spent a ton of time on. That's the one that I would just say, if I had to identify one, would be my nostalgia game. But it's really Blizzard games. Just my memories as a childhood are just so connected with the different Blizzard titles. It's almost like you could go from one to the other and try to figure out what else you were doing at the time. But I remember Diablo and other friends were playing that who didn't play Warcraft. Because the action element was more interesting for them, and how it terrified me. That was a game I was really scared to play. It was Diablo and Diablo 2, and I don't know, all these of them. And then you were talking about EVE Online earlier. World of Warcraft, that's a whole period of my life. Oh my gosh.
Same. It was hard. That's an honorable mention for me. It was hard not to put that on.
So that's, there was the whole, not a good nostalgia, things where I was friends with people in college and they also started playing World of Warcraft. We were supposed to have a guild together, and on day 1 or day 2, it all fell apart. It was this big drama between a bunch of people who didn't play video games together at all, except for this one game. It's very weird stuff. It's, comical, but a story for another time, perhaps. So, short story is, though, that I have a lot of nostalgia for a lot of Blizzard titles. And unfortunately, I think that Blizzard nowadays is totally crap. I think that World of Warcraft was my first exposure to maybe what Blizzard might become later. I remember I had a terrible experience with them because it was a subscription-based thing where I stopped and I thought I canceled. Look, I was an idiot as a young teenager or whatever. Maybe I was an old teenager at that point, but I was just a teenager. I probably messed up something on the cancel subscription, but I didn't realize they were billing me for like a year.
That's how they get you.
I called. I was like, "You guys are still billing?" And they're like, "Well, we can't do anything about that now." I'm like, "Yeah, but can't you just refund it? Like, really? Can you actually not do something about it, or just you won't do something about it?" Anyway, and they were saying that there's no way of telling if I actually did that. And then anyway, but okay. Long story short, I had some bad experience with Blizzard over World of Warcraft. Might have been my own stupidity, but definitely impactful. And just playing, I remember playing World of Warcraft. That's like the one more turn thing. Playing that until like 7 a.m. I would play it in college until the sun was up. And maybe the only other game that I've been so sucked in like that for, which didn't make my list, would be Oblivion.
Yeah.
So the Elder Scrolls series, Oblivion, that was another one.
It's my World of Warcraft. I'd play that. My parents would not let me play video games for a long time, but I'd always conveniently hop into a war zone right when they were about to kick me off, and I was like, I can't leave.
There's no pause.
I can't leave these people, so I got another, 20 minutes or what. Yeah.
It's MMO.
Exactly. So, oh, man.
One thing I've learned is how much time Tortuga spent in college playing video games instead of actually going to college.
What else is college for?
I gotta say, man, if I could, if there's any period of my life I could go back and redo, it would be probably I mean, look I made it where I am today. I'm already sitting on this life, right? I'm already here. So I might as well extract what benefit I can, which in this case is talking about games I played on a podcast. Not a huge benefit. I wouldn't say that's life-changing, but since I'm already here. But if I could go back and do it all over again, I probably would spend maybe 90% less time playing video games and probably would still play tons of them. So, yeah.
I don't know. Then you wouldn't be here talking about all the games you played. Then we wouldn't know you, and
you wouldn't have been known as the...
Cut that!
Was your channel logo that guy from Futurama when we first met?
It was.
All right, moving on. Is that it?
No, there's no moving on.
We're at the end.
That's it. We're done. I'm sorry. It's just...
But look, before we wrap, I just want to analyze one thing. I think we already mentioned it. A lot of these games are from 2004. And even... Or 2005, some of them...
2003, 2001.
That was like the heyday. I mean, just looking at nostalgia factor.
You could probably talk to some other gamers out there in the world, and if their childhood was 10 years ago, then their nostalgia games are going to be from like 2010, 2015 or whatever, right?
No, that's the thing, isn't it? That you and Finnish and Wolfpack are, I know it's surprising, but they are as wise as THG and myself, we're probably 10 years older than you guys, right?
I think so.
I don't think so.
Years. Okay, but we're different eras slightly at least, and we're still picking games from 2004. So, I don't know. I think this is the podcast where...
I don't think any of my games were actually in 2000. I think they bracket it.
Panzer General's 94, Total War Barbarian Invasion 2005 for Barbarian Invasion.
Rome Total War was 2004, Wolf.
Oh, it was 2004? Okay, cool. There we go.
Yeah, there you go. You're in the cool club.
Gettysburg 98. Makes me seem way older than you guys, but I'm not. I'm like Tortuga's age.
You just started gaming younger.
Maybe that's it.
You earned the title as the historical gamer.
He is historic. He has gamer in the title. He is the gamer.
I was born a gamer. I was molded by it.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
He came out. He was born on day one. He saw. He had a Gary Grigsby game in his hand.
Amazing.
I do remember seeing in some magazines that he had games that were like, I think War in Russia was like in a magazine, and then War in the West I saw in a magazine once. It was a different world back then.
Yeah, magazine.
Okay, wow. Another nostalgia moment. PC Gamer. Oh yeah, magazines. And Computer Gaming World, was that what the other one was? There was like two big ones. And I think I had both for a short amount of time, but PC Gamer was the one that would send you the demo discs if you paid the like $1 extra per year.
I had the PlayStation demo discs. You remember that? Like, you go into the grocery store and they had PlayStation Magazine, and you could get like demos for all the different like upcoming titles on PlayStation.
You know, I will say that's one thing that I have been kind of liking, that demos are making a comeback. And I kind of enjoy that. I mean, like the Steam Next Fest sort of stuff, where you get like a small vertical slice of a game and you can try it out. Like a lot of indie devs are kind of doing that, and it's, I don't know, it's kind of nice to see.
I feel like it's becoming a table stakes. Like, it's the only way to get noticed. Like, getting wish lists is so important now. So you've got to use a demo to try and get folks to wish list.
It amazes me that I guess it makes sense that Baldur's Gate had a demo, but it's surprising that a story-driven game, did they just cut it off? Like
I said, you couldn't go into the areas to advance the plot. You just were restricted, but it was definitely compelling. I mean, it was very well done. I mean, a very good demo, yeah. I remember the moment I bought the full game, and then like the first time I moved beyond that area, it was like ecstasy.
Yeah, I imagine.
It was crazy to like be like, oh my god, I can actually move beyond the demo. So I don't know, the whole experience was great.
That's another awesome thing about Baldur's Gate. I think is pretty novel, is transferring characters from one game to another.
Oh yeah.
Like, you could play Baldur's Gate 1 and just transfer your character to 2. I mean, how many games did that before? I'm sure someone's going to type it in the comments for me, but yeah, I'm actually interested in, like, that seems novel.
I don't know if you ever tried this, but I was obsessed with Baldur's Gate, the original. You could actually play through the whole game with nothing but your own characters.
Oh, really?
In multiplayer. You could create a party of all 6 of your characters.
Oh, I see.
And just go through the game like that. Yes! So, you like, in single player...
Never done that. I thought you meant just playing it by yourself.
No, in single player, you know, you can only play as one... You can only create one character in that universe, but when you go multiplayer, you can have all 6 people in your party as people you created, which is, like, broken.
Did you ever play Icewind Dale?
I did not know.
Because Icewind Dale, you constructed your whole party.
Oh, okay. Yeah, very similar to that then. Probably inspired by multiplayer shenanigans people did like me in Baldur's Gate.
Yeah.
Well, this was a great episode, huh?
Yeah, this is a long one. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for coming out, guys. I hope you guys had a good time.
Catch maybe some of us next time. It depends on who THD brings on this particular program.
What? Why are you blaming me? Tortuga's the one who organized the entire last episode.
I can't believe you did that, THG.
When you have the historical gamer, you know, that aura of authority, you get the blame.
That's right. Leadership means taking the blame.
Says the guy with the silver play button.
Is the silver play button in the room with us? Well, as a matter of fact, it is in the room with me.
It's right behind him. It's right there on the wall.
All right. Anybody who has a camera, we're going to just all be on camera from
Nope.
Can we do it like Jocko style, make it black and white?
Sure.
So we look kind of cool, kind of serious.
Wear a suit and maybe get a top hat.
Oh, we should do that. That'd be fun.
Top hat.
Wait, one more thing before we close out the episode, though. We just wanted to go around and just ask what everyone's been playing lately.
I thought you had to go, Tortuga.
I'm so late. But
Space, yeah, he's accepted his fate.
yeah, this is it. If I don't come on another, you may not hear from me again. Hey, but no, I okay, so this doesn't have to be on the podcast, but I did have some like honorable mentions I wanted to rattle off. At least, did you guys ever play this game, Wind War?
Wind War.
Oh my god, this is definitely nostalgia for me. But anyway, Wind War was it was basically like a primitive version of Axis and Allies that you could play on Windows 3.1. Yes. Windows 3.1. Basically, other games I played multiplayer with my dad. So fine. We don't have to talk about them though.
A man with a good relationship with his father.
I didn't play any games with my dad, pretty much. My gaming relationship with my dad was he used to be really big into Dr. Mario, not Tetris. Well, he played Tetris, but he was way more into Dr. Mario, and I had the NES in my room, so I remember like I would be falling asleep.
He'd come in and play.
And I'd have school the next day, and he would be like sitting on the foot. He would be sitting at the foot of my bed playing Dr. Mario till like 1 a.m.
That's actually amazing.
That's pretty funny.
So it's kind of a cool memory to have, but yeah.